The story begins with Louis, the son of the city's wealthiest man, John Franco. One evening, Louis arrives at a five-star hotel with his friends, shocking the receptionist. The reason? He had brought a panther along with him. As soon as they enter, Louis and his friends start making noise, partying wildly. One of them even brings in a kangaroo to feed the panther. But as soon as the kangaroo sees the predator, it panics and escapes, jumping straight into the hotel's swimming pool, with the panther following close behind. Chaos erupts. Guests scream, running in all directions. The next day, animal rights activists gather outside the hotel, staging a protest. They demand action against the irresponsible behavior that put both animals and people at risk. Things escalate when John Franco himself arrives, only to have tomatoes thrown at his car by furious protesters. Later, in a high-stakes board meeting, hotel investors confront John. They tell him that his son's reckless actions have caused immense financial losses and ruined the hotel's reputation overnight. They demand that John take immediate action against Louis. Frustrated, John goes to confront his son. But when he enters his room, Louis is still asleep, completely unaware of the trouble he has caused. John wakes him up and angrily asks, "Why did you do this?" Louis smirks and replies, "Because I wanted to, and I'll do it again if I feel like it." Louis had become arrogant. Intoxicated by his father's wealth, he saw himself as untouchable. Hearing this, John's patience snaps. On his way out, he grabs Louis' expensive clothes and throws them into the trash bin. He had had enough. That night, John returns home to his girlfriend Helen. But instead of finding comfort, he is met with her anger. Helen is furious. "We were supposed to attend an event tonight, John, but you never showed up." John sighs and explains the chaos caused by his son. "I don't know what to do with him anymore. I'm at my limit." Seeing John so distressed, Helen softens. She places a reassuring hand on his shoulder and says, "You can't give up on him just yet, John. He's your son. Maybe he just needs more time." The next day, desperate for a solution, John visits his friend, Christian, a renowned movie director. Christian is busy filming a commercial, and John watches from the side. However, he is unimpressed by the actress's performance. John expresses his concern, but Christian simply shrugs. "I don't care about opinions. I just want my work to be perfect." Then, Christian complains about the lead actress. She thinks she's a superstar, but she can't act to save her life. Hearing this, John suddenly gets an idea. Before leaving, he turns to Christian and offers him something unexpected. "How about making a movie? A real one?" That night, Louis, completely unaware of his father's plan, is at a bar, partying with two women. What will John do next? Will he be able to change his son? The night takes a strange turn for Louis. While partying at the bar, he notices something unusual. His car is being towed away by the police. Panicked, he runs after them, but before he can reach his vehicle, he feels a sudden sharp sting on his neck, a syringe. Darkness. When Louis regains consciousness, he finds himself in a dimly lit room. A man named Sylvain is standing over him, shaking him awake. "Get up! You're already late," Sylvain urges. Confused and groggy, Louis tries to understand where he is. The last thing he remembers is running toward his car. And then, nothing. Before he can process anything, another man enters the room. Beau Villain. Unlike Sylvain, Beau is aggressive. "You lazy servant! Stop wasting time and get to work!" he yells, shoving Sylvain aside. "Servant? What the hell is going on?" Louis mutters, completely bewildered. He stumbles outside, and what he sees shocks him to his core. A medieval village, horse-drawn carriages, men in wigs, women in corsets, and no sign of modern technology. He is in the 17th century. Louis tries to make sense of what's happening. Had he actually time traveled? Was it even possible? Before he can react, Beau Villain storms after him, ordering him back to work. Scared and disoriented, Louis obeys. He soon encounters a nobleman named Viscount, who is heading to relieve himself. But in a bizarre twist, a doctor carefully examines the contents of his chamber pot to analyze his health. Louis watches in horror and disgust. "I'm surrounded by lunatics," he thinks. Unable to take it anymore, Louis runs away, escaping into the dense forest. As he rushes through the trees, he suddenly finds himself surrounded by a pack of wolves. Their eyes gleam in the darkness, their sharp teeth bared. Terrified, he turns and runs in the opposite direction, only to be confronted by a man on horseback, Aston, accompanied by hunting dogs. Aston, furious, yells, "Try running again, and I will kill you." Louis, exhausted and covered in dirt, collapses into a muddy pit. It turns out Viscount is Aston's father, and Aston has been searching for Louis. Just then, Aston's sister, Isabelle, arrives. Seeing Louis in such a pitiful state, she scolds her brother. "This is not how you treat servants," she says. Suddenly, Viscount himself emerges from his grand mansion, and Aston and Isabelle leave Louis behind. As Louis sits in the mud, a bird soars overhead. But something is off. The bird isn't real. It's a drone. That's when the shocking truth is revealed. Louis has not time traveled. He is still in the present, but he is trapped inside an elaborate movie set built in the middle of a real forest. And the director of this movie is none other than John Franco's friend, Christian. Christian, however, is worried. This location is too dangerous. Wild wolves roam these forests. This could end badly. But John Franco insists, "My son needs to believe it's real. Only then will he learn his lesson." Meanwhile, Louis, still oblivious, continues to struggle. After a grueling day, he is sent to the kitchen, where he is forced to peel potatoes with the other servants. There, he learns that he is in the year 1702 and that France is still ruled by kings. Still confused, Louis tells the other servants, "I am from the future. I traveled through time." They exchange glances but pretend to know nothing. Determined to find a way back, Louis rushes outside, only to collide with a speeding horse-drawn carriage. The impact sends him flying. What will happen to Louis next? Will he ever realize the truth? Louis collapses, unconscious. Sylvain rushes to wake him, shaking him desperately, but Louis remains motionless. Watching this unfold, John Franco fears the worst. His son might be dead. Just as panic sets in, Louis suddenly stirs and regains consciousness. Seeing him wake up, Christian insists on continuing the act, keeping the elaborate illusion alive. Days pass, and Louis slowly adapts to life in this strange world. He becomes accustomed to the medieval lifestyle, unaware that he is simply playing a role in a staged production. Meanwhile, John invites Helen to visit, wanting her to see the transformation taking place in their son's life. One day, Louis finds Isabelle crying. Concerned, he asks her what's wrong. She reveals that her father is forcing her to marry an old, wealthy man she does not love. "I only want to marry someone who truly loves me," she says through tears. Louis, ever pragmatic, smirks and replies, "Then you should go ahead with the wedding. That old man won't last long anyway, and once he's gone, all his wealth will be yours." With that, he casually walks away, leaving Isabelle stunned. Helen, watching this interaction from behind the scenes, is deeply disturbed. She turns to John, her voice filled with concern. "This is wrong, John. You can't keep experimenting on your own son like this." John, however, remains firm. "We're doing this for his own good," he insists. Meanwhile, a young woman named Lyson arrives, gracefully dismounting her horse. From a distance, Louis watches her closely. But then, something strange catches his attention. Her underwear is too shiny, too modern. Suspicious, he runs up to her, trying to get a better look. Annoyed, Lyson shoves him away and storms off. Christian, monitoring the scene from the control room, is furious. "Who designed that costume?" he yells at his team. Helen, growing more and more uneasy, finally snaps. "You need to stop treating Louis like an object," she tells John, before turning to leave. But then she pauses. Louis is approaching Lyson again, this time to apologize. Seeing this, Helen hesitates. Maybe, just maybe, this experiment might actually change him. Lyson, though skeptical at first, eventually accepts Louis's apology. Later, during a lunch break, John, Helen, and Christian discuss the next phase of their plan. Christian proposes an idea. "I want Louis to fall in love with Isabelle. That way, he'll learn how to settle down." Lai made the director of the entire setup. Meanwhile, Sylvain takes Louis to a local festival in the forest. The event is filled with traditional music and dancing, but Louis, unable to resist, introduces them to a modern song. Soon, everyone joins in, including Isabelle. John watches the scene unfold and suddenly grows emotional. It reminds him of a childhood party, a memory of his son laughing and enjoying himself. For the first time in years, he sees a glimpse of the boy Louis used to be. However, Louis remains fixated on Lyson. As Isabelle tries to get closer to him, he subtly pulls away, his attention elsewhere. Sensing this, Sylvain quietly informs Louis that Lyson is by the river. Louis immediately rushes there, but upon arriving, he sees something unexpected. Isabelle struggling in the water, drowning. Without hesitation, he dives in, pulling her out and carrying her home. Isabelle, grateful for his heroism, once again tries to get close to him. But no matter what she does, it's clear. Louis's heart belongs to someone else, and Helen's instincts were right all along. Louis was in love with Lyson. Helen, realizing this, was temporarily made the director of the entire setup. That night, Lyson met Louis and admitted, "I believe your story about coming from the future." Hearing this, Louis took her on a walk, explaining planes and modern technology. While eating an apple, he casually remarked, "One day, Kerr will make the most expensive and luxurious phones." His tone quickly changed, and he began insulting the servants working nearby. Annoyed, Lyson snapped at him. "Don't forget, you're a servant too. You clean your master's filth." The next morning, Lyson apologized to Helen for her behavior. "I deal with rich, spoiled brats like him all the time," she explained. "This is nothing new for me." Helen, understanding her frustration, asked, "Then help me change Louis. But whatever happens, don't develop a romantic relationship with him." Christian, watching from behind the scenes, was furious. John, however, calmed him down. "Everything is still under control. Helen is just helping us." Meanwhile, Lyson confided in her boyfriend, Aston, about her role in the setup. Aston was not happy, especially with the possibility that she might have to kiss Louis in the future. An argument broke out between them, leading to a fight. That night, Louis asked Sylvain how people in the olden days expressed love. Like wild animals, Sylvain said, before teaching him an absolutely ridiculous bear dance. The next day, Louis performed the same bear dance for Lyson, singing her a song. Surprisingly, she was impressed. Delighted, Louis thanked Sylvain for his help. John, who hadn't seen his son up close in a while, decided to sneak in. Disguised in Viscount's clothes, he approached Louis's chambers. However, Sylvain spotted him and warned him to leave immediately, fearing that his presence would ruin everything. They argued, but before things could escalate, Louis woke up and immediately recognized his father. Panicking, Sylvain knocked Louis unconscious. Christian arrived just in time and forcibly dragged John away. The next morning, Louis woke up and told Sylvain about his strange dream. "I saw my dad," he said. Just then, Beau-Villain arrived with urgent news. Aston was in trouble. The Viscount had summoned Louis immediately. When Louis reached the Viscount, he was told that Aston was about to be punished. However, there was an alternative. "If you take the punishment in his place, I will give you land," the Viscount promised, "and I will arrange your marriage to any woman of your choosing." At first, Louis refused, but then the thought crossed his mind. If he agreed, he could marry Lyson. He accepted. Soon after, Louis found himself locked in a cage, surrounded by angry villagers. Then, he was publicly whipped. Helen, watching from the sidelines, was horrified. Christian, on the other hand, was thrilled. Later, when Louis went to see the Viscount, he wasn't there. Instead, Aston stood in his place. Aston humiliated Louis, even pouring wine over him, and smugly announced that the Viscount had broken their deal. Louis was furious. Everyone expected him to fight back, but he didn't. He simply walked away. Helen was relieved. "He's no longer acting like a stubborn child," she noted. "He's changing." That night, Louis approached Lyson. "Would you mind being my friend?" he asked. She smiled. "Not at all." Pleased, Louis invited her to a dinner he had cooked himself. Christian, however, was unimpressed. "This story is getting boring," Helen disagreed. She liked where it was going. Lyson and Louis were together when Louis noticed a bird flying in an unusual pattern. But before he could react, Lyson, following Helen's instructions, distracted him with a kiss. Without saying a word, she then walked away. This didn't sit well with Helen. She argued that a relationship built on deception could never be right and insisted on stopping the entire act. But Christian wasn't ready to end it yet. The argument between him and Helen escalated, and she stormed off. Seeing this, John also urged Christian to call off the experiment. However, before doing so, Christian added one final twist, introducing Vikings into the village. He wanted to see if Louis would risk his life to save Lyson. Sylvain rushed to Louis with urgent news. "Lyson is in danger. She needs you." Without a second thought, Louis sprinted toward the village. Upon arrival, he saw that a Viking leader had chosen Lyson as his wife. She screamed for help, but Louis hesitated, terrified. He was about to run away until he spotted the drone again. Taking it as a sign, he grabbed a thick wooden log and charged forward. He fought the Vikings, wounding them one by one, and then escaped with Lyson. But before they could get far, Louis saw John, Helen, and several guards waiting for him. Before he could react, someone injected him with a sedative. Everything faded to black. When he woke up, he was in a hospital. "You were in a car accident," the doctors told him. "You've been in a coma for the past 9 months." Louis was devastated. Everything. The village, the people, Lyson. It was all just a dream. Falling into deep depression, he wandered aimlessly. One day, he saw Sylvain on the street, but due to his contract, Sylvain couldn't acknowledge him and walked away. Sometime later, Louis and John sat together, drinking. Louis finally opened up about his dream. John couldn't bear to see his son like this, so he decided to tell him the truth. He took Louis to a farmhouse. There, in real life, Lyson was training horses. Their eyes met. Overwhelmed with joy, they ran to each other and kissed. Meanwhile, John and Helen also reconciled, mending their broken relationship. In the final scene, Christian was seen running a new program, this time helping troubled kids find their way. And with that, the story came to an end.